Elizabeth Lee has some fantastic questions that sent me chasing answers so as to demonstrate, good form. In response to the Spencer's Writing Well in the 21st Century book, Elizabeth comments, just reading the opening of chapter 4, I found myself reflecting on some of the local news articles I've read, comparing them to those from Washington Post or New York Times. Many of them read like something a kid would write, compared to Washington Post, New York Times, which tend to read on a much higher level, or at a much higher level. Do local news companies, here's the question, do local news companies have guides they should be following? Are we just doing a bad job at reporting? Like, what's up with the disparity in writing style? That's the question Elizabeth's seeking. And I try to locate a number of sources to give my response validity here. I could speak to it from experience, but I wanted to, in demonstrating we are practicing, we're improving together collectively. There was I found the state of Washington, right? So a report filed in the interest of public literacy by the state of Washington that approximately 20% of adults read below the 5th grade level. Okay, and this was close to numbers I had in my head. You come across these numbers, they fluctuate, but not a lot. Another sub percentile coming out of this report was that 14%, or up to 30 million U.S. adults, so adults in the U.S., function below that basic level of what we identified as could be 5th grade level, but actually I found a different report I'll share in a minute. So something this gets me thinking about, if 14% or 30 million adults in the U.S. are functioning below the basic level of literacy, it reminded me of the kinds of ways in which people who are highly literate communicate downward. All right, and so pause for a second, we'll put on our brainstorming caps. Think about those law office commercials, right? The attorneys that advertise their businesses during daytime television, during, Judge Judy, during The Price is Right, during these kinds of hours. And what happens? The volume goes up really loud. Throw in some kind of like dramatic single chord musical background, or just info, but it's coming at you. It's relatively easy to understand info, but it's also attention grabbing, not just through the volume, but in the way that it's trying to get a very clear message across simply, in a simple manner to the audience. And that is attorneys. It's not that they're all delegitimizing by creating these, campy, lowbrow commercials. It's they recognize who they are trying to speak to and communicate with in that mediated message, in that mass communication broadcast on television. So I think about those low-end types of attorneys at law commercials that come on TV, and what should that tell us about what they know about, right, the common demographic? I found a Harvard University study that the U.S. average for reading rests between about an 8th to 9th grade level, and this was early 2000 teens, right? So within the last decade, this type of study, there was a report out of the LA Times in 2013 that the average amount of reading, that adults in the U.S. Reading proficiency is declining, with few exceptions. There is an exception in the over 65 demographic. Interestingly enough, older people are prolific readers in some pockets, not across the board, but among adults, you're seeing this decrease in reading proficiency. And so combine that with the other issues we've already highlighted here. And so we start to get a picture of not only literacy, right, reading proficiency, literacy in America, but now translate that down to how many of us are online, how many of us are spending time online. And so, if you shift all of those demographics over into online communities, all of a sudden we can't tell the difference in different kinds of information that's being circulated, and thus we see that need for digital literacy, digital media literacy, critical media literacy even. These are all interrelated terms with some distinct sub-definitions, but they get at that same theme, that theme of our course, in that we need to not only be stronger practitioners, more mindful, more able and capable to discern the difference between information that's important and information that's misleading, but also we need to be opinion leaders, even in the small scale, even in the household. Got to be able to help others understand that, and in a loving fashion too, right? That's part of the conflict. Is you get certain folks, and I'm sure that they stretch across demographic lines. Certain folks feel like they're in such a know. Maybe there's a bit of a superiority complex in the way they try to communicate how much they know about a given topic or subject or credibility of some kind of source, and we need to find more empathetic ways to communicate with one another, because at the end of the day we do want that is going to lead to a healthier sense of community, family, and even on the national or global scale.